All right, welcome to another episode of The Catholic Couple, having fun with faith, family, and friends. I'm your co-host, Bobby Fredrickson. With me, as always, my beautiful wife,
Katie Fredrickson.
I'm the convert Catholic, and she's the
Cradle Catholic.
And we are on a after Easter, but still Easter podcast. We're still celebrating for another 40 days or so. Mm-hmm. So here we are on a special podcast that I came up with the title of Navigating
You came
the
up
challenges of raising Catholic kids in a secular world. And Katie's was, what was the title that you suggested?
In the world, not of the world.
Very good.
How to raise your kids.
That's very creative, if I should say so myself.
Yeah, because that's never been thought of.
Never.
In the world.
Well,
isn't that in the Bible? In the world, not of the world. I feel like that might be some St. Paul action there.
Well, let's start with a prayer. Mm-hmm. We already need help, I think. In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Lord, we ask you to be with us in this hour. We ask you to guide our conversation. We ask you to bless us and bless all those who are listening. We ask you to open up the ears, open up our hearts, open up our eyes, help us to be the light and the salt. Help us to be the best Catholics we can be, the best Christians we can be. Help us to follow the way of your Son. Help us to give of ourselves in a sacrifice. Help us to lead by example in this world that is so secular and so against you at times. We ask you to help us be different. Help us to be bold and help us to have peace. And we ask you to protect us in that. Help us to take those slings and arrows if we need to, because you said that we will be persecuted, we will be mocked, we will be ridiculed, but in those moments, if we embrace it, we are close to you because they mocked you and they put you to death. So we ask you to help us persevere, help us to stay faithful and to never leave your side. We ask this in the mighty name of Jesus.
Amen.
Amen. In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Mm-hmm. All right, so we came up with this idea of this podcast because, let's just face it, we have kids, we're parents.
And I just feel like as we become, as society keeps unraveling, devolving, I just feel a need to be more on guard lately. I don't know about you, but I feel like I never used to have to worry about certain things. If you think something was rated G, you'd be like, sweet, my kid can watch that. And I don't feel that way anymore. I almost feel like I have to pre-screen, look at everything from what they're reading to what they're watching. It's kind of exhausting. To a game they want to play on, we limit a lot of iPad they don't even have actual iPads that they own. It's like some school-issued iPads, but we're our own, like the adult ones. There's just a lot coming at kids now, right? A lot of conflicts of ideologies that are within our world, and they're not so much ideologies that are, something you have to navigate in as an adult. It's asking kids to navigate ideologies now, which I guess maybe we did have to do that as kids, and I just didn't realize I was doing that, or is it just because we have access to so many different ideas now with the internet and with so much that's, I guess when you think about the media that we consumed as kids, we had like a few channels. I didn't even have cable, did you?
No.
Okay, so I guess my friends did. So a lot of friends did have cable, where I feel like there was a lot of different ways that you could have access to different ideas, right? But like I look at now, and what our kids have to navigate is a world of so many different ideologies, both good and both bad. It's also a world filled with intentions within those ideologies that are good and bad. And our kids now have to navigate that. And the more that we can, in some way, shape, or form, filter out or guide them and help them to navigate that is everything, because I can understand, as a teacher, former teacher, and now an administrator within a school, an educator, that I'm seeing that my personal opinion is that that's where I think a lot of anxiety and depression is coming from with kids, because we're asking them to navigate and filter out so many different conflicting ideologies all at the same time that they have constant access to, right? And I don't, at the same time, this is all my internal struggles, right? But at the same time, I don't want to be a helicopter parent where I'm hovering over every single thing they watch and do. So how do you navigate that?
Well, let's kind of organize this. So
right?
I kind of jotted some things down. So let's break it down. Let's go through. I got a list of like challenges that the kids are facing, and obviously in ways, things that parents are navigating.
Because at the same time, you want to equip them and allow them to be.
The second part I wanted to say. Let me lay it out.
All right, go ahead and lay it out. Okay, I'm just here for a good time. I'm just here for the conversation. Well, you organized it.
I got an adult cocktail, so we can both enjoy it. Okay, so let's just organize a little bit. So
yeah,
there's a million things we can talk about. So let's try to stay. Let's
Streamline.
try to say challenges, things that we're up against, the world.
And what does that mean? Because that could be subjective.
So we're going to go
so
through
many different people.
We're going to go. Well, to us, it's objective.
So we want to look at Christian challenges.
This is yes. So.
No, right. I mean, we have to.
Well, plus just other things, because those leak into. There is nothing outside of God's world. So
okay, right.
So we don't have to. We just include that in it, and then so the challenges. Then we're going to come up with. Practical strategies, how to suggest
I want help
it
too. So I'm just right here to say I don't have all the solutions, but I know what.
Well, we know what a lot of the solutions are. Do we always do them? No. So we can talk about what fails, what works. When we do this does work, and we can be honest about it. We don't have to act like we're not perfect parents. We're sinful, just like everybody else, and we're trying our best. But I think I definitely have a leg up on my parents. And I have a leg up on a lot more people because we take this serious. We try to live intentional, but we fail. So challenges that parents face, the kids face, and then how we can practically try to not. I think part of it too is that I forgot who it was. It says if we just focus on the bad. Like when a pilot is learning to navigate and to fly, if you say watch out for this obstacle, they just see the obstacles and they end up hitting them.
Yeah,
like in their simulations and stuff like that. So if we're always telling them what they can't do,
right,
instead of focusing on what they can do and then why they should be doing that, and then instilling them and encourage in them to do, okay, hey, freedom in the neighborhood and running all over the place and stuff like that. If you just let them go in the neighborhood, but if you say, hey, this is what's going on, I need you to not cross the street. And if you see somebody
go do
this, equipping them with strategies, with the boundaries. So let's start with some of the challenges, and I'll just list them off, and then we'll just kind of spit fire from there. Okay.
Got it.
So the first one we already touched on, identity crisis. So identity.
Did we?
Well, you were saying about the identities and all this different stuff, and I think that some of even the basic.
I was just saying the access they have to the ideologies in this world, I guess, could give you an identity crisis because you have so much coming at you. You don't know, how do I fit in? What am I gonna become? I can have all these. We have so much more options now, right?
Well, I think that as we are in a secular world, that if we don't have our identity first as made in the image and likeness of God, a child of God, that anytime we put anything above that is where the identity crisis comes in. So whether that is, if I'm American first, well, God transcends the country of America. We see the church just and is American, but it's so much bigger than America. or if
Right.
whatever, my race, my gender, my all these different things, if that comes above that first identity, there's a
Yeah.
crisis there
Because then,
it's
because
upside
all
down.
the other things can be broken.
Yes,
And the
if
only thing that isn't broken is your identity
and
in
then
God.
it becomes an idol almost. It becomes
does, yeah.
in place of God, and that's where, because what, like if you put your identity in your job, what happens when it doesn't? You don't get the promotion or things aren't going your way. Then you take it. You know, you take
people-
failure.
yeah.
You know, if that gets to your head, then your failure, you take it like really differently. But it's
Well,
like,
think about
maybe
athletes.
Yeah.
Think about an athlete who their identity is in their ability to play a certain sport, right? And
Yeah.
then they can have
Get
an injury.
older.
Then no, they get an injury.
injured or-
What if they're not older? What if they're young and they get an injury? Like your identity has been grounded in the thing that you do, the skill that you have, and not, yes, that is going to happen, and you have to shift gears, but being grounded in who you are, that's something not of this world, because everything of this world will pass. Everything of this world can be taken away. Everything in this world can be broken, can be manipulated, can change. And so when you put your identity in anything other than God, you're going to eventually be let down, or like you said, suffer some kind of identity crisis. But how do you, when you talk about kids, think about a child's mind and how it's forming, and they are discovering who they are and their gifts and their talents that God has given them. They want to see what they're good at, what they're bad at, and trying to navigate that, right? Trying to discover those gifts and
yeah.
talents to who God is calling them to be. And so sometimes,
But if the gift comes first, is that if you're
Right.
defining yourself by your gifts,
right?
well, sometimes the gifts don't last forever. Like good looks don't last forever.
Mm-hmm.
Physical strength doesn't. All these things are fading. If that's first, is that the gift or things like I said with identity that you were just born. You didn't earn that. You were just born. Whatever, white, a woman, whatever it may be, an American. Those things weren't earned. They were just. So if that's what you place first, it's flipped upside down. Yeah, that's fine. We are called to, the talents that we get from God. That's the gift. But
And they're to
our
be
gift back
used.
to God.
Yeah, is to use
Is to
them
use
for His
those.
glory, not for ourselves and
Exactly.
for our identity, right?
Exactly.
So yeah.
They need to be aimed the right way. So yeah, God wants us. John 10:10.
So this is all great
We
in
wanna-
theory, but what is that in practice? How do you teach your kid to be grounded as a child of God? Like, how do you actually teach that or show that or help them find
well,
that?
I think more is caught than taught. I've said that before. Yeah, we can teach them Our Father, Hail Mary, the prayers, the rosary, and those things. Great. Those are all good things. However, if they're dealing with a teacher or they're dealing with a friend that are saying different things about, that's not who you are. You're not a child. Whatever it may be, where they have something at their disposal, like prayer, like a conversation with God, like God be with me, or like habits of prayer, not just like, before we go to bed, we say these prayers, but to cultivate, like yesterday, Braden was outside. You're like, what was you doing? He's like, oh, I was just praying. I was just talking to God. He's 6. We've instilled that into him, is that
We made it a norm.
we made it a norm that praying is normal, that prayer is just a conversation with God. So it's just one of those things that's what we do. It's not, doesn't always have to be formal, doesn't have to be in a church, but that goes that even with your friends and with you're at school, that if things are tough or you feel uncomfortable, to have those conversations, but to have those conversations in advance, like, hey, obviously age appropriate, but as they get older, like, hey, this is the things that the world is saying, but that's not true. And this is what we believe, and this is why we believe it, and this is what Jesus says, and this is what it says in the Bible. And there's a reason why, not just because God said so, but just to have those kind of conversations to say,
Because you have value and you have worth.
because you have value and you have worth,
So
and those
instilling
other
an
things are
inherent
those
dignity,
other things are
yeah.
important. But that isn't
Where it comes
what gives you your identity.
You don't have to earn your value and your worth from anyone. It's already there. And I think that's where you can establish your inherent dignity, your value and worth. You can establish that. It's going to take so many different conversations at so many different age levels, because you can have that with a 6-year-old and then a 9-year-old. But when you have that with a 13-year-old, they're kind of like, yeah, right. I have to prove myself with my grades. I have to prove myself in my sport. I have to prove myself to get into this high school. I have to prove myself then to get into college. So these are,
that's
again,
fine
like I
to
said,
strive
this
for those
is
things,
all
but
great
we have to have
in
those
theory.
But we have to have those conversations.
In the moments of them combating the ideologies that say, no, you define yourself this way, right? It's got to be a constant. It can't just be a one and done. It needs to be an ongoing conversation that you have with your kids around their value and their worth does not come from those externals. It comes from God alone. And because you have value and you have worth, he's instilled you with gifts and talents. When you find those gifts and talents and your charism, and yes, you are meant to be the best version of yourself.
Yeah, but
them
sometimes you're not
and
going to
using
make the sports team. Sometimes
Right.
you're not going to get into the school that you want. Sometimes your boyfriend or girlfriend's going to break up. Yeah, those things happen. But
Right.
but if that is
That's
everything
not where your
to
worth
you,
comes from.
if that's everything to you, you're going to be let down and be disappointed.
Right.
And it's not to say I told you so, but it's going to be there to pick them up and let them to preach it and to be part of that, because that leads into the second challenge, which is fitting in.
Yeah.
So when all your friends are doing this, or hey, all my friends are going to this school and I couldn't get in, or hey, all my friends are driving around and they're drinking or they're doing drugs or they're smoking cigarettes.
I think this is a big one where conversations, what you alluded to earlier about the why behind the what is so important, because I don't know about your parents, but I mean, again, I was raised by a single mom who was doing the best she could, but I would just hear pretty much like a no because it's wrong and not, I feel like I've had a lot more conversations around like I thought they were eating too much candy or too many like junk food snacks. So I didn't just say, stop eating junk food, eat a vegetable. I actually explained to the kids what too much sugar does to your body and how it affects you and how it affects you later in life. And so they actually understand why I'm saying no to sugar, not because I said so, but because these are the reasons why. Or I don't let you watch this show, or I don't let you watch this because it affects your brain. And this is how it affects your brain. In these ways, it affects you. And it did, in all honesty, I didn't think that stuff really worked, those conversations about the whys behind the whats, until Avery and I were reading a book on the couch. Like I was reading one, she was reading one, it was in silence. And she's like, can I talk to you? And I was like, yeah, sure. And she said, I'm just really worried about a sleepover that I'm going to be going on soon. I think they might be watching a movie I might not be allowed to watch. And I just want to make sure that like I know what to say when it comes on or what to do. And I was kind of like, whoa, like I would have never told my mom this. I would have just watched the movie and not said I did it. But she knows the why behind the what, right? That's not good for her brain, and that it could affect her emotionally, and it could disturb her mind, and she doesn't need to be exposed to those things. She wants one night. And it's not that I scared her into it. It's that I explained, we don't allow you to watch certain images until you're older because of this. Or, that kind of stuff is just going to affect you in this way behaviorally and mentally and emotionally. Yeah. So that's why you can't watch that.
But also that we established those open lines of communication,
right, and
where
that she was able to be vulnerable, right? Where she was able to be vulnerable and saying, I stopped and I said, I'm really proud of you that you came to me with this and that you didn't hide it from me. She's like, well, I just am worried because I just don't want to be the weird girl who says I can't watch this, and then Braden did the same thing. He was at a friend's house and the friend turned on something he's not allowed to watch on YouTube. And he did not tell him to turn it off, but he did say, hey, just want to let you know, this came on. I couldn't believe he put it on, but it was on YouTube, so just so you know. And I was like, well, thanks for that confession, but next time can you say, hey, let's watch something else? I'm like, you guys don't have to be the weird kid that says, I'm not allowed to watch that, but you can straight up, say, hey, suggest something else. And that's exactly what Avery did for that sleepover. She suggested an awesome show that I've watched with her that all the girls ended up loving at the sleepover and watched for a really long time. So it actually ended up all working out because I had the conversations that were open and vulnerable about the whys behind the whats, and she had the the trust with me to be able to talk to me about what she should do. I just hope I don't lose that. I just hope I don't have where she becomes a teenager then and it's worse things.
Well,
you know?
I think too, a lot of that is, we like to say love listens around here, is that, definitely being able to have an open line, which means encouraging when they do ask questions to say, because I said so, or just do it.
To not
or whatever.
dismiss,
Not dismiss
legitimate, questions or why, if we get asked, why can't I fill in the blank, right? I don't shy away from it as because I said so. Like we explain, again, I don't want to beat this dead, but explain the whys behind the whats. If you're making certain parenting decisions, you can't alienate your kids from the world, because then they're going to resent that, and they're going to find sneaky ways to go around the things you're imposing. You have to have these conversations that are open, and you have to allow your kids to be able to talk to you about certain situations to where they have your trust. Because if you just forbid everything, you could eventually develop a sneakiness and an antitrust to where they just want to ruin my good time, right? Yeah. That's what I'm walking that fine line where I'm not going to allow you to do this, and this. I'm not going to allow you to watch this, and this, right? I'm not. But here's why, and here's what we can do together. And when you have a problem, and that's another thing too, is telling them life is going to be difficult. As a Christian, you are, and I tell them now at 6 and 9 years old, I tell them the world has ideas that are wrong. Some of the intentions are good behind these ideas, but the ideas themselves are so wrong. And you guys are going to be constantly facing that. And you will be having to make decisions where you're going to be the weirdo. I said, but guess what? So has every Christian in true Christian in the whole existence of Christianity. I mean, Jesus died on a cross because of the things he said and did, right? Christians have been martyred. This isn't anything new. I think
but
one thing
we don't have to be weird by doing it. That's our whole thing,
right?
Is let's normalizing Catholicism. but that's
because it is the most. Who said that? It's the most sane. Oh, that was gosh.
It was Carl Jung who actually said it, that Catholicism is the sanest thing.
The sanest thing.
It's Carl Jung, who wasn't Catholic. Right. Well, because it practically also makes sense the way that we live our lives. Mm-hmm. Because, all the studies and the statistics come out of who are the happiest people are people who have God in their life, who are living it out in a life of service and giving their lives away. Is that, it's better to give than to receive. That's true. And if you're living a Christian life, that's faith, hope, and love, which is trusting God has a plan and a purpose for your life. And when we have a goal and have a purpose that we're working towards, that literally is how you are happy. That's how our dopaminergic system works in our body. And if you have hope, Christian hope, which means that we trust all the promises that God has told us, that we live those promises today, that this isn't just in heaven, but his kingdom, Jesus came to earth so we can share in those today. And that love is caritas, it's charity, it's giving our time, our talents, and our treasures away.
And look at what the actual definition of holy is. It means to be set apart. Set apart from what? Set apart from the world. This is a fallen world, and we are meant to be set apart from it. And it is so,
But we don't have to.
Difficult.
But we don't have to be the Catholic book that came out, the Benedict option. We don't have to go to a monastery and to cut ourselves off from the world.
That's what
so
I mean.
How to be Catholic in a secular world? Because let's just face it, most of the world, even if people are call themselves Christian, most people are still practically atheist. Most Christians don't look any.
They call themselves. Father Mike, that was in his recent homily, where they said actually 90% of people believe in some kind of deity, God, that means 10% are atheists, but 90. I think it's Americans.
Most people say they just don't know, but even when they say they do, they act as if.
So 90% of people believe in something, but then he challenged it in his talk, basically saying that Yeah, but people who call themselves Christians live as if there is no God, live as an atheist. So whether you can proclaim this belief, the way you live you're not really any different than if there was, if God existed or not. So I think that's it's within those conversations that you have that are real. Be genuine, be real with your kids. You don't have to put on a front and be perfect. It's like having real conversations even when you mess up and saying, I'm trying to strive to be, this way, that way, or whatever. But, trying to fit in, that's a really, we all have been there. You're still there as an adult sometimes,
that was the
right?
quote. That was the quote I shared today from Father Mike, which said is that too many times we trade in our identity at the altar of approval. That we want others to like us. We want to it feels weird, It does. No one
slavery to. Oh, that is a sin. I forget what it's called. Is it called the sin of human approval? Is that what it's called? Where you compromise so many different things in order to.
It's just that people obviously they want to be liked. They want to be part of the group. They don't want to. It's hard to stay. It's hard. It's hard for a lot of people to do that
because that breeds conflict, and conflict is very uncomfortable.
Yeah, it creates all kinds of negative emotions.
Yeah,
but with the but when the world accepts the church, it's not the church anymore. God.
That's true.
Jesus told
that's
us
not holy.
It's definitely not going to be
apart
holy.
If it's like everybody else.
The church is called to be the metal ball in the stomach that it never can. It'll be in it, but it's never going to be digested.
Ooh, I like that. Where did that come from?
That's a saying. I can't remember who it is.
I like that.
But fitting in.
So what is it? The world. What is it? The world. The world will cause you something, but don't worry. I have overcome the world. The world will.
What are you talking about from the Bible?
Yeah, what Jesus said. The world will. I can't. My
That's
brain's
from Matthew. Sounds like.
But don't worry, because I have overcome the world. But the world will offer you something like a strife.
Comfort.
No, that's Benedict. All right. We clearly weren't prepared with our Bible passages.
Well, that's all right.
That's okay.
So another challenge is, in spite of all these different things, is that we, especially as we more and more people are, have better means and have more education, and we're learning is that the over-parenting that we try to compensate, and so it's like, okay, well, so this is what I'm going to do everything. I'm going to be like the parent, the kid's concierge. I'm going to book them everything. I'm going to, screen everything. I'm going to be so over-parenting and so overbearing, and what we like to call the Zamboni parents. And we're going to try to remove all the obstacles. We're going to make the everything easy and perfect.
Nobody wants to see their child hurt.
Correct.
But
what happens when we do that?
Our job is not to do that. Our job is to help them navigate life.
Because
not to eliminate the obstacles in life.
You're not going to always be around to do that for them. And then you're setting them up to not be prepared for when it does, whether that's at school when you can't be there, when that's, in the stress of a test or something, or there's a bully, there's something going on. The parent can't come into school and fight your battles for you, but in these trials and these tribulations are going to come. And you're not doing them any favors by trying to squash those for them.
I think that, there needs to be a balance. I think that there is this need, obviously, to protect your children. My goodness, yes. But at the same time, we need to help them cope and give them ways to navigate uncomfortable and difficult situations. Because, again, more so when I taught, because of, I taught in high school and middle school, I'm just really seeing, what was I? It's been like almost over a dozen years in education. And there's just such a huge rise of kids that just can't cope with basic things. I'm not talking like, major things. It's difficult to navigate through a major life event. But I mean cope with regular life stuff. And that was starting to really present itself when I was in the high school a few years ago, when I was teaching in a high school. I would start to come, like, I can't, how do I navigate and help a kid cope with a regular everyday issue, you know? And it's because so many things are just solved for them, or what they do is they look to an adult to solve every problem they have. And so once they get to high school, because I taught freshmen, once they get to high school, you gotta you gotta you know
Yeah, you got to
you
navigate
gotta
that.
navigate that. You gotta solve your problems
Well,
there.
it's not only solving them, but it's a lot of negotiating. And it's not always words, but it's just like that's part of life is trying to it's like a dance almost. It's like you have to enter into it to these interpersonal relationships. It takes experience and to have but that's if we're isolating people and we're doing those relationships and we're like our kids were like, hey, can you text so and so? They want to go play. I'm like, absolutely not.
Right.
You want to go to their house, get a little courage, go knock on the door like a normal human being's done for hundreds of years, and go knock on the door,
Yeah, it's
and
little,
go play.
little
But
decisions
they would
like that.
but they would even be scared about doing that.
I think the best rule of thumb that we decided to adopt as parents is don't do for them what they could do for themselves.
That's rule one.
That really was a big thing that we did in our house.
Even if it takes more time and it's a pain.
And it is a pain because they do it wrong and you got to fix it. But there's so many things that if they could do it themselves, I'm not doing it for them.
But that goes in, that gives you an opportunity to coach them, to encourage them, to be their cheerleader. And then when they struggle, to be there. Yeah, not every time you have to be next to them, but like, we preach the Jesus model. I do, we do, you do, and then that's the, hey, I'm going to show you how to do it. That's the right way to do it is that if I want you to do something, let me show you, and then we do it together.
Through modeling and coaching.
Yes.
It's not about
and helping them anticipate
being the problem solver or being the problem eliminator. Not even a problem solver, a problem eliminator, or I'm going to make sure that my child does not experience this problem. Why? That's not how life works. Yeah. Like if a child doesn't get along with a teacher, well, they're not going to maybe get along with their boss. How can you help them to navigate how to approach that individual if they don't mesh well with their personalities, right? Like there's just so many different things that, again, we're in the world, we're not of the world. But we need to help our kids navigate it. And what better way than to use their faith to give them that confidence and that strength and that foundation that they need to go conquer the world, go out into the world with a confidence and not a cowardice or a scared like that because they need us to do everything for them.
Yeah, especially, there's plenty of Bible passages that say to have not a spirit of timidity, but of power, of confidence, to know that God's with you and to trust and to help them navigate, because the more you do those for them, you're robbing them of the lessons that they're learning. Just as important as school is, the lessons that they learn outside of school or interpersonal between their friends or their teachers or an older kid or a younger kid, all these different things are opportunities and lessons that they need to learn on, whether that's, as much as, hey, going to the librarian to do it. Like if you're doing everything for them,
maybe these are challenges God is putting in your life to help you strengthen a virtue that he sees you need to cultivate. Maybe God is allowing these challenges in your life to help strengthen your character in a different way. And you as a parent can help them to pray through that and to help them to navigate that. We don't all have, it's not about being a doormat. I mean, obviously if you see an injustice for your child, there's absolutely a way to fight that. When there's an injustice that your child cannot fight without you, absolutely that is where you step in. But there's so many things, obstacles, challenges that I think we need to back off and coach our kids to be able to navigate them, but not intervene, because
especially among
they're
their
not
peers.
They're not going to have that strength within them, or that grace, or that way to utilize their faith and implement their faith in those moments either. If we're doing all the work to solve their problems, how are they ever going to turn to God, know how to pray through something, know how to get through something? you
Yeah,
know?
like I said, and what you're doing is it seems like you're helping them, but you're robbing them
Right.
of that growth,
Right.
growth mindset that we preach here is that it's okay to not know. It's okay to fail. It's okay to not be picked. It's okay to for all these things, but also it's also how you deal with things. It's like we're not called to every time we don't get our way to run to mom and them try to make it right. Well, maybe you didn't practice enough. Maybe you didn't study enough. Hey, this is your opportunity. Like Michael Jordan, like, hey, he didn't make the freshman basketball team. And hey, look, what did he do? He didn't go home and cry to his mom and dad to go talk to the coach and why he didn't make it. He spent
Right.
every waking minute, if that's something that they really want, to practice and to push to do that. Sometimes you need those things.
That's something actually, I don't know if it's on your list as an obstacle or an issue, but
Challenge.
or a challenge, but I see it being a huge norm in our world, in our culture right now, to try to become the victim and blame everybody else for the thing that we do. So I'm very obsessed with ownership. Even if you have a small part to play, the thing that that is something that we are constantly saying to our kids. If you come to us with just what the other person did and don't say your part, that's a problem. They have to own what you did. Own what you did wrong, because it's when we own what we do wrong that we can identify our own part and how we can improve and how we can be better, right?
And we could teach, that's a lesson right there we can
That's a
teach them,
lesson.
is from the Mass. That's how we start the Mass. The mea culpa. It's through my fault, through my fault, through my most grievous fault. Is that's okay. It's okay to make mistakes. It's not okay to be a bully and to do stuff like that, but
Right.
those are conversations. But when you do make a mistake, own it. And we tell our kids that that's worse. If you sit there, well, no, it was my brother's fault and he did it. I'm like, no, own it. And our daughter has a really hard time. And don't we all? It's hard to
Right.
admit it
Oh
and to
my
look ourselves in the
gosh,
mirror
yeah.
and say, through my fault. But that allows us the grace to go to confession. That allows us to show, hey, you know what? It's okay to fail. Look, Dad fails, and he's going to confession. He goes all the time.
Right.
He must fail a
To
lot,
model
and that's
that
okay.
to
And to
them.
model it to him.
You know, if I feel that I handled something wrong with them, I have no shame. Like I was short with Avery. She was going over to her birthday thing. And I was really short with her because I was in a really bad mood and I was really upset with something. And she even said before she left for her party, Mom, like, why are you treating me like this? Why are you talking to me like this? And I was like, just go to your party, right? And later, when I saw her, I said, hey, just want to let you know that that was wrong of me. I shouldn't have talked to you like that. And I'm really sorry I did that. And she's like, that's okay. I think you were having a hard time or a bad day. I was like, yeah, I was. So again, if you are going to expect your kids to have some kind of ownership in their actions, you need to have some ownership of yours. I mean, again, you are the authority figure. You are the parent. You want to undermine those things. But at the same time, when you have something like that with me, you know, right? Like that wasn't cool. Like I didn't need to treat her like that because I was in a bad mood. I had to acknowledge that. I had to say my part in it. And I think that, again, can foster a stronger relationship where she feels like she could talk to me about when she messes up because I've talked to her about when I've messed up, you know?
Yeah, it's being vulnerable leads to closer relationships where then she can trust you and to come to you with her issues and her problems. Yeah, it's a big deal. I mean, like for me growing up, like that just wasn't part of the conversation ever. You know, it just wasn't. There wasn't a whole lot of humility when it comes to that stuff. But that, you know, it's just my different experience. But we know that humility is like the number one virtue. It's like it's the core of growth mindset. It's admitting that, hey,
How could I do better?
how can I do better? How can I whether and ways
Humility is just the truth, though. That's the
It-
thing. It's
it-
not
it's-
about
yeah,
about
but-
saying something wrong
but
or
it takes
bad. It's
but it
just
also
the
helps
truth.
but we also need to help our kids examine their conscience too. So we need to help walk them through. Like at the end of the day, like when we do prayer, we should do better job of like, hey, you know, we do a check-in at dinner. We do what we call high-low buffalo, where we ask the kids like their highs, the lows, and something else of the day, you know. So we kind of get some gauges of some things going on. but it's helping them.
Right.
To,
So you're saying we should incorporate some kind of daily examine, like
maybe
like you know what's really good is Matthew Kelly's what is that, the prayer
the prayer process.
The prayer process has a youth one. Our kids, I guess, are coming more of age to be able to introduce that to them. It's really good for just a reflection on your day, and then you can just keep kind of seeing when you keep making the same mistakes over and over. So that's something
just
I could put in
helping
the
them
show
learn
notes.
to point them out in themselves, because you have to first identify the mistakes.
But this is just it, though. The world is going to tell them that
that wrong?
Nothing is wrong. That it's all subjective. And so I
think part of the world would switch is that there's wrong, but it's collective. It's systems, or it's the school, or it's these other things. It's not you per se.
There's not an individual accountability.
That's it. And
that's why everyone's a victim now, though. There's nobody to be accountable for anything. Then it's just everyone walking around as a victim. That's why I'm so obsessed with, no, you got to own what you personally did wrong, and let's move on from it. Right?
Yeah. Let's learn
you
from
have it. In the notes that you have here, you do have a quote by
Cardinal
Francis George. Why can't I find it right now?
I have it memorized. Is that we live in a culture that nothing is forgiving, everything is permissible, and nothing is forgiven. He was the late Archbishop of Chicago.
Yeah, that's cancel culture right there.
That's it. And this is prophetic. He said this in the 90s.
Yeah.
Is that now it's everything can go, but you mess up, we're coming for you. This is we're coming out with the pitchforks. And especially in this world, is that if it's my kid, oh, they didn't do anything wrong. No, it was this part. But it's anybody else, crucify him.
It's so true.
So
it's
that's
so true.
especially with me at work. It's like well, look what so and so's doing. I'm like,
and if you call anyone out on what they're doing,
I'm like, okay, but I saw you yesterday doing this. Oh, well, that was different. Well, I had to go. I'm like, okay, so it's like, how about this?
Again,
how about you worry about you, and you worry about you, and but you're not going to get people to admit, oh, you're right, I was wrong. It's very hard for people, but trying to create a culture with our kids to model that and to encourage that's a sign of strength, to ask for forgiveness, to apologize first, to do that's the hard thing.
Can we flip that script? Can we flip that quote? So that's our world, right? We live in a world where anything goes. So everything's okay. You're okay. I'm okay. It's all subjective truth, right? Mm-hmm. But nothing is forgiven, right? So you're canceled immediately if whatever group thinks you offended something. I don't know. Let's flip that onto what Catholicism looks at the individual, right? As we do have absolute and objective truths and a morality that we should live by. Yeah. And if we mess up, we are forgiven if we are sorry. I don't know which one would you rather live by? You can do anything you want, but when you mess up, you're completely canceled. Or
you're setting it up to fail, because we're going to let you do it,
but then we're going to catch you. But then when it's not popular anymore, you're actually going to be canceled for it. But the actual reality of life and God's law and what we're called to live out, our true calling in life, to become holy, to become one with Him, to live a life of abundance, comes with parameters, boundaries, and a morality that we should follow for our sake, not for God's sake. It is for our sake, for us to be in a state of alignment with God's truth, is fulfilling, is beautiful, is a way to harness our true capacity for our gifts and our talents that He's instilled in us. It's so beautiful when we really look at God's law. And I gave a talk on this in the Catholic house party recently it's just a beauty of God's law when He it gave us boundaries. It actually gave us freedom. Just like any time you play a game, you want to learn the rules to the game so you are free to play it. we have boundaries and a morality in life, so we're free to play the game of life, right? So that we can become the best version of ourselves to live, let God live through us in that life, in that grace, through the graces that he gives us. And then when we do, we're happy, we're fulfilled. And what you said, it comes full circle where those Christians are the happiest because of that. No. And because we know when we fall, not if we fall, when we fall, we can acknowledge what we did wrong and we can seek forgiveness and we will have it because he died on the cross for that to happen. So instilling that in our children. Listen, these are the things, these are your guardrails. This is what we're asking you to live by. But just know that we'll always love you. When you fall, we'll help pick you up. But know that right is right and wrong is wrong. There's a right, there's a wrong.
Yeah, well, try living in a world where you can't make any mistakes because you're not going to be forgiven. I mean, good luck. You maybe think you're perfect, but sooner or later, you're going to say the wrong thing. You're going to do the wrong thing. You're going to fall. You're a sinner.
That's a lot of anxiety.
It's a lot of anxiety in the world. That's exactly what it is. Right. Is that you have to be perfect, or the what happens is you just don't try. That's the fixed mindset. Is that you're scared to fail because someone's going to catch you up. Yeah. Or they're gonna point it out to you. They're gonna not forgive you. You're gonna be thrown out, right. And there's no space there to grow, to try something different, to have a dialogue with somebody that you maybe disagree with. Right. So creating an open environment within our kids to make mistakes. Obviously, don't do blatant stupid things.
Obviously, doing the same mistake over and over again is obviously not learning from it. And
but those boundaries,
setting boundaries and exposing them to a morality of right and wrong, and the 10 Commandments is simple.
We talked about the boundaries before.
Right.
The boundaries are important because,
so important.
Like G.K. Chesterton says in Orthodoxy, is that where there are boundaries, if you place a ton of kids on an island and you put a guardrail.
I thought it was a cliff or something.
A cliff, but around it you put a guard around it. The kids know, okay, this is the edge. They'll get as close as they can. They'll stand on the guardrail. They'll be hanging off. They'll know how far they can go. They'll explore the whole thing. Yeah. But when you move those guardrails, the kids are in the middle of the island because they're scared to fall off.
Right.
Because then they can't do things. So by having these set guardrails, which are God's laws and these things that we these disciplines and these freedoms and these moral and ethical decisions that we should be making and implementing, is that helps us be free to do things, to free to live a life that's fully abundant and to be life giving and purposeful,
but not easy.
Definitely not easy.
And that's the problem. Is if we are constantly doing things for our kids that they can do for themselves, we're making it easy on them. And so when something is hard, and when something is hard, they can't. It's difficult for them to do it.
Well, that's when you want to slay the dragons, is when they're young. When they're smaller, you don't want to wait till
do hard things. Hard work pays off.
It pays off, and it does.
It's an extreme eye roll in our house, but we say it all the time.
And I was just saying that today. I got a guy at work who's just this week started working out. And he's like, I gained 15 pounds in the last 2 or 3 months, and he's dating this girl, and he's obviously now his eyes are opening up. He's a young kid, his eyes are opening up to different things now. He's like, oh man, So I'm like, he's like, man, this is hard. I said, yeah.
Isn't it like day 3?
I gave him this is day 1. So I gave him the ropes, the battling ropes.
Don't give it too hard.
Well, he was just
get discouraged.
Well, he was just sitting there and kind of just stretching, and he's like, and then he was doing a little bit of work. He's like, how long before I see some results? I'm like, well, okay, number 1, 80% is your diet. I'm like, number 2. It's going to take a couple months. How long? It took you 2months to put this on, and that was just sitting around. I said, it's a lot harder to lose it, and you have to do all these things. I said, but nothing good comes from that's easy. There's always, and this leads us into the next one, which is what the world offers is self-gratification and instant gratification and self-gratification. So delaying gratification is a big thing that we can teach our children.
Would you say that that's more of a modern issue? Because, think about how putting butter on your table would have, I think of world in terms of butter. Think about it this way. If I wanted butter, I can go to the store and get butter, put it on my table, right? That's instantly, I could go and get it. I mean, if we
Okay.
wanted butter 100 years
You have to
ago,
churn it.
I'd have to go out and milk the cow. I don't know all the steps to making butter. So if you butter people out here,
Remember
get
we
offended,
churned butter
sorry.
at the Heritage
I
Day.
did, but I don't remember. I don't know what
Shout
goes
out
in
to
there.
the Calumet City Historical Society.
I know there's salt involved. Anyway, you that's a process, right? Like there's. I
Well, now
think
we have
that's
Amazon. We're the Amazon world now. It's like
I know, but
you get
what
stuff
I'm
in
saying
2
is,
hours delivered
what
to
I'm
your
saying
house.
is that hasn't always been the case for
Correct.
humanity. Instant gratification. I think that's another added issue that could, that could get in the way of what God wants for us. And I think that we have to
Well,
find
let's just
ways.
this is from
we
the
have
beginning.
to find ways to help our children experience that, because the world is not going to give them that. The more technology gets better and the more like the instant gratification stuff is something that we do have to kind of navigate as parents, to be honest.
It's from the beginnings. I mean, it's nothing new. It's just now it's a lot easier because as technology gets better, it's easier to do it. But this is part of the garden in the fall, is that it was instant gratification of I want this thing, someone's telling me, and then look what happens after that. Their eyes are opened up. Now they realize they didn't have to worry about the future. They're in the garden with God. Everything was perfect. Now, all of a sudden, now they're conscious of their own mortality, which means when you're conscious, that means that you're worried about the future. So now you have to work. You have to save things, and you have to set up, especially then with agriculture, they didn't just have food. They had to do that. They had to work and do all these things. Mm-hmm. But a lot of it was fasting and feasting, but still, they still had to delay things and to, that's the ant, what's the story with the ant and the grasshopper?
Yeah, the grasshopper and the ant.
And the grasshopper's
right.
not doing all the work, and the ants are either storing up and getting ready for the winter.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like, or the famous study with the marshmallows and, being able to tell,
what kid was going to be successful
if they're able
out.
to wait it out and to delay gratification. Because at the end of the day, we have to look at our life on a
I think that causes huge anxiety as well.
Of what?
I think that instant gratification is a huge
Well, it has a lot to do with, your dopamine, and that's is that when we work towards something, it's just like anything. It's like you work for something, and then once you get it, it's the journey towards it that gives you more of the happiness than when you attain it. Because once you attain it, it's like, oh, it lasts for like a second, and then it's just like, what's next?
But now that we're obtaining,
now that you're just getting it,
yeah.
and there's no that stage of that building up is something that you worked on and worked towards, and you take pride in. Then you get there, and everything now is just you're getting it. It's given to you. You just got it. It's like.
So how do you set those kinds of circumstances up for your kids?
Well, number one, money, helping them
to learn how to
save money. Like, hey,
so don't spend it as soon as you get it. Like
exactly.
Your birthday money, save up.
But talking about it, not just hey, we're just going to put it in the bank, but this is why you should do this, and thinking about the future, stuff like that, putting those ideas in, and any conversation that you have. Obviously, we're delaying gratification on our behaviors for the ultimate delay, which is heaven. So that it's theological, is that's what we're not just because God's trying to be mean, he wants to boss us around and things like that, but no, that this is what's ultimately best for us here, but it's also best for our souls to be united with God. There's all kinds of other different things that you can do. Obviously, the technology makes it worse. It's just the clicks and the likes and the hearts.
So
and
that is I could brag about it, something that we do. I think that we do effectively with them is they don't really get on any kind of screens. I mean, obviously, unless it's schoolwork,
which is
during
rare
on a school day, night, whatever.
Yeah, and they don't get iPads really on the weekend. I mean, they have maybe half hour at a time. We'll give it to them if they
time limit.
It.
Right.
We also delay the gratification and we make them earn it.
Right.
But do you think our kids are happy or less happy?
Oh, I think
our kids love to
happy.
Be outside.
They want to play outside.
They want to play outside. They're and they're riding their bikes and they're swinging. They're climbing trees. They're running around. They're like making up games. They're doing things like what we did when we were kids. Is like manhunt or kick the can.
No, you can't watch TV on if it's a school night, there's no screen.
But setting
So-
I mean, I think part of
And
raising
they're
kids in
pretty
this
cool
world
about it. They know.
But setting boundaries, not that it's totally evil or totally bad.
No.
But helping them delay. Hey, look, yeah, this isn't our go-to thing that we do because we also at the same time you're preaching. We want to have a healthier lifestyle. We want to enjoy our company together. You can't enjoy each other when we're on our phones, which I can do better at that when I'm home. Or
I will say this, parents, you are their model. Your screen usage, your technology usage, your behaviors they're always watching. And you might not think that they're even paying attention to what you do now. I'm telling you they are. So I've had Braden say a lot of things to me. And I had for a while I was doing a lot of work at home. I would bring my laptop home and then I would have to do a lot of things. And he just walked past me one time, like nonchalant. He's like, you're on the screen a lot. And I'm like, oh my goodness.
Well, kids too, especially younger kids, they have especially if you set that with them, they have their sense of justice.
Yeah.
At a young age, it's like
It's
they don't understand the gray. They know
No,
once you tell them screens are bad, sugar's bad, or Father Miletta preaches that the cuss words are really, really bad. Yeah. So now it's like Braden will be praying, and God, help Daddy to not cuss anymore.
Well, I don't know if I told you this, but Braden was sitting in my office after school one day, and I was doing work, and he wasn't. I don't know what he brought. This was out of left field, and he was like talking about hell, and then we started talking about purgatory. I don't know, because he was asking me questions, and I'm just answering what the church teaches on whatever. And he was like, I'm just worried about Dad. And I was like, why are you worried about Dad? He's like, well, because he swears so much. And I was like, oh my gosh, he's not going to hell. I'm like, he goes to Mass every day.
Well, I'll have
he has
you
a
know
Catholic
that
couple.
my Lenten
Yeah.
thing was giving it up, and I'm like 95% cut it out.
I just couldn't.
I still have to work on the.
But you don't even swear that much, first of all.
I do not in comparison to everybody else, but I'm always should be comparing myself to you to zero, which is.
And he knows you go to Mass every day, and he knows.
But their sense of justice is that he heard it twice in 2 homilies, and man, I'm the
he
devil.
Really thinks you're
Thanks,
gonna
Father. Yeah, so but I know it's wrong. I should do better.
Yeah,
and I'm not making excuses.
We had a conversation how I think he took that.
I think it's just been so.
I said, well,
so
Dad will
many
probably
years.
end up in purgatory. That's
I
not
hope.
something he'd end up in hell for. Okay, Braden? He goes, oh, really? Oh, okay. I was like, oh my goodness.
Yeah, let's hope.
Yeah, it is a keen sense of justice and taking it literally, right?
Yeah, don't have that. I don't think he has the ability, to parse that out or to try to balance justice and mercy.
It did worry him, I'll tell you that. I was like, oh my gosh. So having those conversations, and when they get ideas that are a little wonky about our faith, letting them talk it out. And that's another thing too that I'm okay with, especially because I taught theology. I encourage this in my classrooms. It's okay to ask questions about your faith and to question, why does the church teach that? It's not okay to just say, I don't believe that because I don't agree with what the church teaches. It should be, I really don't understand why the church would teach that teaching, right? Yeah.
And if you don't know, say, you know what, let me get back to you on exactly, and try to give them good answers. Because
that's why we like listening to Patrick Madrid together, and the kids want to call him and ask a question. And he actually did a whole episode on just kids calls, and Avery and Braden were so mad that they weren't on that. They're like, I'm like, this is a best of, you guys. This is from years and years and years of kids calling him.
Well, Avery, what did she say to me today? She goes, Dad, did you know that you can use your left hand when doing the sign of the cross? Because Patrick Madrid said so. I was like, yeah, you can. I get it. But this is just, the custom, and, it's the right hand of the father. There's all these other things. I'm like, I know I'm left-handed.
Put on Patrick Madrid in your car, and your kids will pay
you don't realize what they pick up.
That's my point. I guess that's my point of this whole thing.
They're
What did
sponges.
what's your
More is caught.
more is caught than taught. Your behavior, your way that you practice your faith, the way you handle situations in your life, the way
way
you are
you
vulnerable,
pray.
the way you pray, the way that you're vulnerable when you mess up, the way that you
How
live out your
serious,
faith
how
is what
serious,
matters.
how serious you take your faith is how serious, and that
And how you navigate the world.
Yes.
If we're going to teach these kids how to navigate the world, be open and honest with them about how you're going to navigate it. If you're going to tell them that these horrible certain movies and images rot their brain, why are you watching those? Like different things like that. I think speaks volumes again to what Braden's sense of justice is. It's true. If you're going to say these things are all like, if I tell them they should only eat fruits and vegetables and rice and meats and but I'm over here eating a big bowl of ice cream. I'm not. How am I? I'm not practicing what I'm preaching. That just looks like okay.
Yeah.
So modeling is huge. Modeling is huge in walking them through different scenarios and situations.
I think a big thing too is, but also at the same time, encouraging them to be themselves. That they don't have to be this ideal person. Like like some kids are better artists, and we can cultivate that, and some are athletes, and some are whatever they may be.
Braden is really into chess, and
he's into baseball now,
and now he's into baseball. And he
building
loves
things.
math. He loves building things. And Avery is artistic, and she is really strong in math as well. And to help cultivate, again, finding those unique gifts and talents that God has given them and help them to cultivate it, but
them
with
to be
virtue.
Themselves.
Yes, with encouraging them to cultivate virtue within themselves, to be the best version of themselves through putting that identity in God first. And then finding those gifts and talents and how to use them to honor him and live the life that he wants. That's the thing I prayed over them when they were little every night. Lord, continue to mold them into the individuals that you're calling them to be. Help them to be the best version of themselves and grow up to be a man of God or a woman of God who knows you, loves you, and always strives to be the best version of themselves. That's what I prayed every night. I don't care what you end up doing, as long as you are doing what God has called you to do and that you become the best version of yourself and letting God mold you into the person he's called you to be. Because I know that while my kid will have obstacles, while my kid will have a really difficult life, even in spite of that, if they're living the life God has called them to live, I know they'll be truly happy and content. In a true sense of happiness, not in a fleeting sense.
Too, and if an environment or a situation, whether if they're in public school or they're in a Catholic school that's not very Catholic or whatever, don't be as scared to do as a parent what you think is right to protect them, because sometimes the environment is very important. It's one thing for a parent to instill all these things, but if eventually they're going to be a little bit more rebellious when they get to the teenage years, and their friends are very powerful. So that's a bigger thing. It's like also you can't pick your kids' friends, but you can help them check. You don't have to stalk them, but you know which kids are good and which kids aren't. And we're an average of the 5 people that we spend the most time with.
Right.
So if you spend the most time with mom and dad and, a couple of the neighbor kids and then a couple of kids at school or whatever, but knowing okay, well, every time they hang out with this kid, they come back and all of a sudden they're talking back and, they're being shady or whatever, it's like, okay, well, maybe we'll start asking these questions, or maybe, they're at a house with it's loose and wild with the rules. And
having open conversations with your kids about those things, because honestly, those kinds of situations sometimes pan out where that child doesn't always act the nicest eventually to your child, right? And you could say, well, why do you think that is? Well, it's kind of because they get whatever they want, Mom. I'm not raised that way. It's just like, okay, well then, now when they get like that, you just walk away, like helping them to navigate those situations too,
Yeah, well, I mean, let's just be honest. It's hard. It's hard to raise Christian kids in the secular world because
it's being thrown and shoved down. Things in this world that are contrary to our faith is they're going to continue to be shoved in our kids' faces. And what the thing is that we can't just there's no way you're going to protect your kids from every single thing, right?
But we can prepare them.
But you can prepare them, and you can equip them, and you can foster a relationship that's rock solid with them, so that they see you as that comfort, not as the denier. That's why you have to make sure that you pick your battles, because if you are too overprotective, there could be a resentment, and then it turns into a sneakiness, yes. And then you lost them. Yeah. You know,
that was nice in the.
So a strict but fair, right, and a strict but loving.
But I think that's what the secret is to everything, is finding that balance,
sweet spot. Yeah.
You know, which is hard. That's why an open dialogue and being honest and talking to them like, hey, look, I know this is your first overnight. Okay, you're gonna go here, and this is what happens. You stay up. You're gonna probably stay up too late. You know, our bedtime around here is 9:30. Yeah. 9 o'clock on the weeks, whatever. But it's the weekend, and it's okay if you guys want to stay up. Acting silly, and you're gonna be eating ice cream and doing stuff. Okay, but these other things to think about, and I trust that you're gonna make the right decision, and encourage them. And then why not pray with them? Say, hey, let's pray. And just trying to make that as part of normal life. Normal life. Yeah.
When Avery talked to me about her worries, I said, if I could be kind of honest with you, you're going to probably be faced with a lot worse when you get older, and you have to start acknowledging now that sometimes doing the right thing is going to make you feel left out sometimes. Yeah. I said, so you really need to understand that. And I've said that several times to her in different conversations that we've had, to where I've said, you're going to find out that you're going to be faced with a group of people doing something that doesn't make you comfortable, and just know that you're going to be faced with a decision. You're going to go along, or you're going to walk away.
Yeah. And
just constantly having those conversations, and then because I told her that's going to happen, right? Because I told her she'll be faced with that obstacle, and helped her we brainstormed ways that she could navigate it. I think I have a pretty good inclination that if she is faced with something, she's going to be able to come to me and say, hey, Mom, this happened, and this is how I navigated it.
In real time. That whatever the situation, you can pick up the phone and you can call me anytime.
Yeah.
And I'm here for you, to know that you have
that support system.
Not going
to judge you. And if you go along with the crowd, you're going to, you feel bad about it. You can tell me, that thing you said, and I went along with it, and I'm so sorry. And this is, you know what I mean? Like, having those kinds of conversations. I mean, my goodness, I've actually had a conversation with her about, like, Ouija boards and different, games that you'd play. Like I played a Ouija board at friends' houses, and I didn't realize how. Because my mom would say, "Don't play with that. That's it. That's the devil." And then that's it. It like never actually. It was almost why. But so it made it more interesting. Exactly. My mom says this is bad, but having those conversations, I don't think I don't know. And then actually, be careful. A side note on all of this: they're trying to market that crap to kids now under the guise of Christianity. I was just telling you, Bob.
I saw the interview.
On
an exorcist was talking about it.
Oh, okay. You saw it. So on Amazon right now, there's a few different kinds of Ouija boards. One of the Ouija boards is a Christian theme, where it's supposed to talk to the Holy Spirit, and has a little cross-shaped. I don't even know what the stupid thing's called. That's got the.
I think it's called Holy Spirit. I don't know.
No, that thing that you'd move, the thing that you actually put your hands on. It's like in the shape of a cross. I forget what the name of it is. Another kind of Ouija board that's marketed to little kids is about has puppies, and like for girls, about just a cute little cuddly game to get a little girl. It's okay. Well, so now we're marketing.
That's the challenge of the culture. These cultural things and I just saw a video, and a guy at work drinks this liquid death. They're cans of water. They're like $1.50 a piece. It's just water. It was a liquid death, and the video was actually a witch. And he's like, "Yeah, we can demons." That was like the whole thing. It was legit, and it was literally a witch casting spells and doing all this on all of it and this and that. I'm like, the world this is not. There's nothing new under the sun.
Yeah,
this stuff's been going
not,
on from the
yeah.
beginning. So we can't
True.
just hide in the mountains. We can't just go to a
Right.
monastery. We can't just wall off our kids and act like they're not going to be somewhat exposed, but trying to instill with them our sacraments, our liturgical lives, the truth, our
In
prayer,
love, the truth
in
in
love,
love.
and have open dialogues, and to not make it seem that when they do fall down that they can't come to you,
Right.
that there's no forgiveness, that we have to practice if we want our kids to be forgiving people. We have to be forgiving people. We have
Right.
to also, we have to do these things ourselves. We can't just say, do as I do, not do as I say,
Genuine
not
and
as I
practical.
do.
Right.
Yeah, that's
Right.
part of the problem of the world. And that's part of the major reason why most people aren't Christian is because of Christians. Let's just be honest. And that's, that's what Gandhi said. He's like, I love Jesus, but I don't know about those Christians. It's like,
Right.
and then that's our call to be saints. Our call is to try our best when we fall down, get back up, but to know that there are going to be these obstacles. There's going to be these trials. It's going to be hard. Jesus said we're going to be persecuted, but blessed are those who are merciful. Blessed are those who are pure in heart, is to will one thing, to do God's will, even when it's hard, even when you feel like you're alone, even when it's everybody else is, doing the thing that's, trendy now and it's not right. And it's not right. And to not go along and, it's lonely sometimes. So, some of the other things to try to help is finding a good community of like-minded believers
and parents with kids who are going to be raising their kids and instilling the same values. Not putting in a bubble, but at least trying to have that strong circle, right? Like, so no one feels like they're alone or at least with kids, knowing that, I have a solid group of, really, I don't know what kind of Catholic I'd be without my best friend. It was such a norm in her family to be at Mass every Sunday. It was such a norm in her household to go to confession that even though, I would get, an attitude about things I have to do. She did it because if I didn't see somebody else my age doing that, I don't know. I mean, yes, your conversion and everything, but honestly, I don't know how strong I would be in my faith if I didn't have that peer that was also exercising and practicing her faith as well. So having access to people of the same age, that's a huge thing. You can't pick your kids' friends. They're going to gravitate to but you can find ways to, if you foster deep relationships and friends with other parents who are practicing Catholics as well, like just having that access to other kids that your kids don't feel, so it's not isolating, because that's difficult to do. That's what, but that was our whole podcast with the bishop about the importance of community and small groups. And having that. Because we are going to have to go out into the world. We don't have to be of it. And the more of a strong community that we're coming out, we're going to be stronger and feel more courageous to be able to live the life that God's calling us to live.
I think a lot of it, like we said before, is just living intentionally. Is that's where the discipline comes from. That's where the better decisions are made. That's where the better friends are. That's where these things where we're intentional about what we're doing, that we kind of try to plan out through prayer and through discernment of what things to do and what not to do. Yeah. A lot of life and living in this Christian way of life of following Jesus, the first Christians weren't called Christians right away. They were called the Way. Right. So this is, they prayed together. They lived a communal life together. They were, the apostles' teaching and breaking bread, and they were doing the stuff together. And it's a lot easier, even when they're being persecuted, even when they're being martyred, is that when you got that group, it's just easier to do it on the way. But it takes intentionality. They like, hey, we're going to do this. And this is what we're going to do. This is what Jesus calls us to do, and this is what we're going to do. And it's funny because I was listening today. Matthew McConaughey he's a Christian. I heard him talk again today. He's got this thing coming up on April 24th. It's a free event about the art of living. And he made a good point where he said the the science of satisfaction leads to the art of living. Is that the science of satisfaction is that it's a process. It's a you do these things, and that's where satisfaction is. If you just kind of just randomly go throughout your life and you don't seek out the good, if you don't put first things first, if you don't set up the boundaries, if you don't have these hard conversations, if you don't have humility, if you don't have these character traits, if you don't cultivate this personal growth through the love of Jesus and the Holy Spirit, then you don't have that grace to do that. And if you don't have that progression towards being the best version of yourself, or being a better person, or being the best parent, or being the best husband or wife, or whatever those things may be, that how can you get to that art of living where, it's the good life? It's like, hey, we're happy. I got a great family. We live on a nice block. Yeah, there's going to be trials and tribulations, but even in those, I can be a mature Christian where when the times are bad, okay, I can see this won't last. This too shall pass. Things like that where you have to, the first art of living doesn't come first. It comes second. It's like the enjoyment, just like working out. Like, yeah, the dude I'm working out with, it's like, yeah, it's hard, but it's going to be hard no matter what. It's going to be hard looking at yourself every day in the mirror. Yeah. What's worse, the pain of being sore, or the pain of regret? Is it going to be worth it? Yeah. Is it going to be easy? No. But it's worth it. What's worth more than getting your kids to heaven?
That's exactly what I've said in the past to them. I said, as your mom and dad as your dad, I'm like, do you know what our fundamental job is? And they're like, well, no. I'm like, to get you to heaven. They're like, what? I'm like, yeah. So if I redirect you, if I, do something that you don't like, I'm like, my job is not to be your friend, and my job is not to eliminate your obstacles, and my job is not to make your life easier all the time. My job is to get you to heaven. And I read a book about, fostering virtue with children and utilizing that within discipline. And it said that the adults have to start cultivating the virtues first before it could actually have a virtue program implemented for kids. That the virtues that are going to be taught and to be cultivated in the children that you're teaching have to be cultivated and worked on with the adults. If we're not on the same journey to heaven and trying to be saints, we can't expect our kids to be on that journey either. And so if our job as parents is to get our kids to heaven, then let's look at that is the end game. And it's going to look different for every single person on how that is attained. But how that is your purpose.
They can sniff.
That's your number one purpose.
Sniff the phony, and they could tell.
But that doesn't mean you have to be perfect.
No.
It means that you also need to acknowledge that you need to be cultivating virtues in your own life, and that you can be vulnerable with your kids sometimes of when you fall, because that's real life. That's reality. And that
you don't have to give them all the details.
No, you don't have to give them all the details. Yeah. But there can be some conversations, like I talked about earlier, where I said, hey, Avery, you know what? That wasn't kind of me. That wasn't patient of me at all, that I snapped at you like that. And I'm really sorry. I'm working on my patience. Like if I can name the virtues that, we want to try to cultivate, right? If we want to foster that in our kids, we have to also cultivate it in ourselves. And that's... What other topics did you have? Was that all of them?
That was it. That was
good.
Yeah, over an hour, 15. So we did good. I know it's...
You always tell the time at the end. I think it's funny. I wonder if our listeners
Well, I should also state that we did have a family game thing right before we came down here, and I did win both games.
It's because the first time I didn't understand how
Are you
to
owning
do
it?
something.
Are you owning it?
No, I didn't know that I was
lead by
trading
example.
my points.
You didn't trade. You didn't trade.
I accidentally gave my points away, and I didn't know that that's what
I
I
still
clicked.
beat you by a lot more than the points that you gave me. It was 130. I won by like 7,000. What are you talking about?
Because it eventually got tripled at the end.
So what happened
anyway,
the second game, Kate?
So this is stupid. I don't think anyone wants to hear any of this.
Well, I think it is that the kids love to play games with their parents.
Oh, yeah. We always play
And I
games.
love to smash them. I never let them win.
I know you don't, which is terrible.
No, it's not
I don't really
terrible.
let them win either, but sometimes they win
Sometimes
against
they
me.
win. That's why I'm not going to let them. They got to earn it.
Yeah. There is a thing, though, to let them win every once in a while. You can't always.
There
beat
is a
them.
study when it comes to play. Yes, they need to win like 30% of the time.
Yeah.
So
But they
when-
do on their
When
own.
we
so
wrestle,
that's
I let
good.
them beat me up too. I don't just
Yeah.
smash them and throw them around, which they enjoy. But I also let them do that. So, well, I think we hit a lot of topics. If you enjoyed this, we would appreciate you to go on to wherever you listen to good podcasts and give us a 5-star review and write a review. Email us. We're always looking for new topics. I have been utilizing ChatGPT in the. Yeah,
That could be its own podcast.
Katie does not like anything about ChatGPT.
It's not
but
that I just like it. There's a lot of.
she
Anyway,
calls it
that's
the
a whole-
robots, but
Yeah, the
the
robots.
robots. But
Robot takeover. We've all seen Terminator. Thank you. Now they're writing music. I'm good.
Speaking of, did you know the Terminator is the prequel to the Matrix?
No.
I just saw a TikTok.
Is it the same author?
Same author.
Oh.
She was talking about it, and it was a woman.
It's a woman?
A black woman wrote it.
Wrote the Terminator,
She wrote the Terminator
and the Matrix?
John Connor's Jesus Christ, JC, and Neo's. He becomes the one. It's a whole thing about like her explaining it. I'll try to
Isn't
link
it
to it, share it.
all Plato? Isn't it
Neoplatonist, kind of, but it's Christian. She explained it that it's Christian. And Terminator is the prequel to Matrix. And she goes through the whole thing and talks about it.
Wow.
And that the Terminator trying to come back, trying to kill John Connor before he's born. And she had him, and it was kind of like a miraculous birth because he was from the future, but really wasn't the dad because he wasn't there. It was like all kinds of stuff. There was all these stuff, and she thought it all through. It's obviously not word for word, but it's
Right.
loosely kind of based on the story.
Interesting.
But it's the prequel to Matrix.
Wow.
I did not know that until
did not
TikTok.
know that.
See, you can learn things from TikTok.
Oh, jeez. Don't get me started. Okay.
All right. Well, we appreciate you listening, and like I said, you give us 5-star review. If you're not following us on Instagram, we're the Catholic Couple One. We do have a YouTube channel that I am planning on posting some new stuff. If I can ever get Katie to help me.
I gotta do my hair and makeup for those.
Yeah, but you're so beautiful. Okay. You are my beautiful wife. I always announce that.
See, I don't have to do my hair or my makeup for podcasts. I could be in my sweatpants.
You are.
This is the best.
That's all right. We have
All right.
fun. Well, I
Wrap
thank
it
you,
up, Bob.
I thank you for taking the time.
Thanks.
All right. Let's end in a prayer. In the name of the Father, the Son, Holy Spirit. Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be.
World without end.
Amen. All right. Have a good day.